So a national park is managed for natural resources and natural processes. So that means that forest fires, we don't fight the forest fires that are natural, only the man-made ones. We can see, if you look over on the hillside over there, you can see that there are some of the trees that are really patches of large trees, and then there are patches of smaller trees. The smaller trees were afire about 100 years ago. And so quite a bit of this Olympic Peninsula burned about 100 years ago. Okay. As we walk up there in a little bit, there was a forest fire up there about 10 years ago. Okay. And they just basically let that burn because it was natural. So when you're looking over there, you can see the glaciers, and the glaciers are shrinking because the climate is warming. Okay, so it's not just a matter of that the temperature goes up, but the warm layer that we live in gets thicker and thicker. Okay, so the summers come earlier and the winters come later. That means the melting season is longer now. So even though that they get a lot of snow that can help build glaciers, they melt much faster. And so less than half is left over here in terms of what it used to be. So one of the things that happens is that we get through sort of various sort of thresholds where things change. And I'll show you about discharge in Skagit River in the 1970s. We hit a big shift. And also in about sort of the late 1990s, we hit another shift where it got warmer. And if you look over on that forest patch there, you can see there's a tremendous amount of young trees coming up now that the forest has extended into the meadow. That started about sort of mid-1990s and up till, so that's another sign of that it's warming. Okay, so that means that these meadows here that are up here get smaller and smaller. That's a problem because there is an endemic species of marmot here that's called the Olympic marmot. It only exists here on the Olympic Peninsula. It wants to have continuous meadows, and as these meadows get fragmented by the expansion of the forest, they're slowly disappearing. Okay? So that marmot started to evolve as a species at the end of the last ice age. Okay? But they were living down low elevation. So as the glaciers were retreating, the marmots moved up at higher elevation, followed the sort of the alpine meadows. Well, then this becomes an island, right? This becomes a habitat island where there's no connection to anything else. Similar on Vancouver Island, the same marmot was there, but it evolved into a different species, and it actually is a really dark one, and that's the Vancouver marmot. And here we have the Olympic marmot, and both of them are sort of critically threatened because as the tree line continues to go up, eventually you're going to run out of, you've got to get to the peak, right, as it gets warmer. So that's really a critical sort of issue with these meadows here. I haven't seen any marmots here, but I will guarantee you we will see the marmot in the Cascades next week. I'll show you, these are sort of big herbivores. They make big caches of vegetation for the winter, and then they hibernate. So they take a big long snooze for about sort of 5 months. So that's a nice nap. Right? That draw that you have right there, not the first one here, but the second one is the Elwha River. And that's the one that had those two reservoirs on it that we're going to stop at next. Okay? So, any questions on this? Okay. So what I like to do is we'll walk up on the path here, and you have to walk on the path. You can't